Good morning, everybody. As you're coming on, welcome to our College Board Going Digital Part 4. Practice, practice, practice. We probably should have called it practice and preparation, as I think that's more appropriate. We're going to give a minute for folks to come on. While we're doing that, I'm going to drop a little message in the chat. Please make sure to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what school, your position, so that we have an idea of who's on here. And as you're on here early, we'll let you know that the Q&A will be open. Both Ted and myself will be watching that Q&A while Jason and Kari are doing the work, and I'll introduce all of them in a second. But welcome, everybody, to our 4th edition of this really, really successful webinar series where we've been able to bring some of the critical minds in testing and assessment around our new state digital SAT practice here. And today is a real gear shift this morning as we shift away from the practical, how do we do this test? What do we need to get ready? To now thinking about, all right, we've done it once. How do we take what we've learned and put it into practice and preparation to get ready for those all-important spring assessments for accountability? And as always, I am joined by a wonderful cast of merry folk. You guys, I think at this point, all very well know our friends Ted and Kari from the College Board, who I'll throw over to in a second. But on this one, we also have another Michigan native, Dr. Jason Feig, former assistant principal at Howell, principal at Dansville, a bunch of other places. He had to deal with me in a couple of PhD classes along the way. But now he is one of the director for school partnerships at Khan Academy. And he'll talk a bit about that new relationship that Khan and College Board has with this new assessment, what's happened. I'd like to welcome a lot of folks to this call. We have our president-elect, Jolynn Clark from Frankenmuth, a number of board members from MASSP, Brad Hale is on the call. We'd like to thank you all for being out here, and certainly everybody else who's here. We have a lot of new faces that I'm seeing in the chat. Thanks for introducing yourself. As you're coming on, please take a second to drop into the chat who you are, what your role is, and what school you're at. Without any other further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Ted Gardella and Kari Anama from the College Board. They're going to get started, and then we'll shift gears over to Jason Feig at Khan Academy and talk about the options that you have between now and those April tests to really dig in to the preparation and practice work that's going to help your students do better. Ted, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks so much, Tom. And we really appreciate the partnership with MASSP, the access that it gives us to education professionals who really do all the hard work on the ground. And I just wanted to take a moment and really thank everyone, not only for coming to this webinar series, but also for the great work that Michigan educators did in the fall for fall testing. Hopefully you're now beginning to see some of the student results, and Kari has been already working with schools to help them utilize the reports. We will be doing a webinar on utilizing the reports. And also, I do want to mention, I know that the College Board and the Michigan Department of Education have begun the process of putting out information about the spring assessments. There was a webinar on November 7th. That was also recorded. I know that there were some challenges with participating in that webinar. But I hope that you learned a lot during the fall. I'm so thankful to the many people who sent us emails and information about, both the positives and the challenges from fall testing. Those are definitely going to impact spring testing for Michigan. And I'd like to encourage you to continue to do that, to provide information to Kari and myself, to Tom through MASSP. I know that he put out a survey recently. It's really invaluable to get directly from the field feedback and input on the fall testing and on our preparation for spring testing. But today's emphasis, as Tom said, this is really a gear change for us. We're really going to talk about how you're going to help students utilize the practice resources and their results. And then in December, we'll come back and do a session on the reports from fall testing. But please stay tuned to MDE Spotlight for more information on what we're going to be doing this spring. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kari Anama. Kari has been, just phenomenal, not only at helping schools administer the test, but now she's been able to successfully transition into helping schools begin to realize the results that they got from fall testing and really ramp things up so they can help students for spring testing. So, Kari, let's get started.
Good morning, everyone. Ted, are you seeing my screen the way it should be?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to see so many familiar names in the chat and so many of you join us today. Thanks for being here. Jason and I are going to tag team and share different ways you can help students practice with College Board, Blue Book, and with Khan Academy. So lots to share with you today. So changing our delivery mode from paper pencil to digital was exciting, and we hope that your students found it to be easier and more like they're used to preparing for tests and doing tests. It's a change that we're committed to supporting, and we want to ensure that students are prepared for the digital SAT for this spring. So we're going to provide opportunities for students to get familiar with Blue Book by providing experiences with the app, testing tools, formula sheets, and calculators. And Blue Book offers 4 full-length practice exams, and they're available on the same platform that students used in the fall and will in the spring. And then Khan remains an integral part of our commitment to deliver that test prep for the SAT. Khan has released their digital SAT courses for reading and writing and math on their learning platform, which includes videos, articles, work examples, lots of things. So Jason's going to give you a lot more information on that today. If you look at the difference between the two, if you're looking at Blue Board from the College Board platform, that's going to give you authentic practice experience. It mirrors the student experience that they're going to have on test day. We're hoping that it builds confidence, gives students real experience with the tools and features that they will actually use on test day, and it gives performance feedbacks. So students will practice and get results automatically to provide insights on what they got right and wrong and why. When you look at Khan, there are lessons in partnership with College Board, and Jason's going to go over what those look like exactly today. But those are going to be working on skill building and preparation as well. So I did put a QR code on there if you would like more information on Blue Book. They're currently available. And our goal, again, is for students to experience the same test experience during practice that they will on test day. The sections are timed, but they can exit a practice session and return to the exam without losing that time. So they don't need to commit to having a full 2-hour period of time to do that. And there's also a web address for you if you'd rather look that way for what exactly that looks like. There's where they would get on that practice site to visit to get on Blue Book, either from home or from school. This is exactly what the students are going to see. They will see that they can do a test preview or they have full-length practice tests. And they also have the ability to go to Big Future when they enter that site. They'll have the ability to select which full-length test they want to do, a PSAT test or an SAT test. And then they'll have the ability to choose practice 1, practice 2, practice 3, practice 4. The full-length practice tests are timed like real exams. They can also use assistive technology if they have accommodations, so they can practice that test with their accommodations.
Kari, before you move on there, we have SAT practice tests. We have PSAT and MSQT, which is also PSAT 10 practice tests. Do we have a practice test for PSAT 8-9?
Yes, it is in there as well.
So all 3 levels, there are, practice tests, but there are more for SAT than for PSAT and MSQT and PSAT 8-9.
Thanks, Ted. So like the digital SAT, students will be able to see their scores in their account. So as always, they can log into their personal College Board account and get insights about their score and explore Big Future and other resources. When a student logs into their score report, they'll see their total score and section score at the top of the screen, and then they can click See Score Details for more information about their percentile ranks. In the score insight section of the report, students are going to see their total score and the average score in their school. Then they can click to see all of the comparisons to see how their section scores compared with the school average as well. Next, they'll see their percentile rate compared with all testers in the country. And then the next section is knowledge and skills, which gives them the opportunity to look at how they performed on the knowledge and skills for reading and writing section and in the math section. So if they click on the right-hand side of the score report, students are given several opportunities for next step. First, they're given the option to practice and improve, and this is going to take them to Khan to continue their work on their skills. Then there's a link that takes them to SAT registration, help them find colleges, and give students the opportunity to sign up for student search. And then the last step is getting their personalized AP recommendations. So when you think about, if you're an educator, which all of you are, if you think about the content, skills, and domains, there's 4 for the reading and writing, and there's 5 under math. So on November 6th or November 16th, depending on when they tested, students with College Board accounts will be able to view their score reports online. And we've simplified this so the student score report can make the report more user-friendly and relevant to students. So you can see here the view of the top portion of their score report. It's got the total and section scores along with percentiles. And then for PSAT and MSQT, if the score is for guidance purposes only, you'll see GPO, meaning they cannot be used for the National Merit Scholarship Program. The asterisk means your selection index score will not be considered for national merit, or maybe it is if you see the number there. And then the new knowledge and skills section is intended to help students identify where they have strengths and areas for improvement. And the reason I'm showing you this is because they're going to need this when they move to Khan Academy, and you might be able to assign Khan resources for them as well. So knowing which area that they scored higher or need more work in is going to be important for you to see. So that's why I wanted to share this screen so you can look at those different domains and your students can understand where they need to go to Khan Academy to get more work on it. Here's a view of the bottom portion of the student score report, which provides career insights. Career is a driving force when students make decisions about their future. They know what they like and what they're good at and the opportunities available to them and the next steps they need to take to reach their goals. So providing career information directly on the score report provides an opportunity to spark interest in new careers and spur action. All students taking the digital PSAT 9 or PSAT and MSQT will receive information about 6 careers directly on their official PSAT score report, just like you see here.
Hey, Kari, one question came in, and I know that I don't know whether you were going to address it in another slide, but in terms of taking practice tests, can students just do the math portion? Can they just do the ELA portion?
Well, they can stop at each one. So they're going to take, that's a good question, if they can just take math. I don't think so, because they're 4 full-length exams. So they could start with the ELA and stop there, but I will check to see if they can just choose math too. That's a great question. Thanks, Ted. So I'll move forward. At the bottom of the screen, students have a link that will take them to Big Future. And this is College Board's free online planning guide that helps all students take the first step after high school. They can check out careers that they're interested in. They can find colleges based on what's important to them, and they can discover ways to pay for college. And once they're ready to get started, Big Future offers the information that they'll need to make that right decision for them. So when students look at their scores, it's a great opportunity for them to think about what's next steps for them in school or training or careers that they might like to explore. So again, that this portion is going to be the most important part for Khan Academy as I switch over to Jason and let him show you some of the things on Khan, but knowing those domains and then what those domains entail. So when you think about craft and structure, What does that mean? That's words and context, text structure and purpose, cross-text connections. When students move into Khan, they're going to see those words that they're looking for. So you as their teacher can help them figure out if information ideas was an area they might need more practice on, then they're going to want to look at Khan and do some work on central ideas and details, command of evidence, inferring, those kinds of things. And it's the same with math. If they find that they're really strong in algebra, but they need more work on the problem solving and data analysis, what does that mean? That means maybe they want to do more work on ratios, rates of proportion, percentages, probability. So based on what they see in that school report and what you know are the content domains and what skills are tested in those content domains, that's going to be important for students as they move into Khan. So I'm going to shift it over to
Kari,
Jason.
before you go, I think there's a couple questions. So number one, I know that you had the link to the overview document in the slide. There's really 3 documents that folks should get. They should get the teacher implementation guide, the assessment framework, and then the test spec overview. And they'll get an incredible amount of information about the domains, about sample questions, all that information that they want to know about what's content-wise in the tests. And I will also, another big plug for our 5th and final webinar. This is exactly what we're working on with the SAT task force through MAISA. And so our last webinar, we will do a lot more about how to get all the information about content domains, sample questions, and so forth. We also have a couple questions in the Q&A. One question is about the subscores, and there are no more subscores that are being released. So you will get a reading and writing score and a math score and a total score, but you won't get those subscores or the cross-test scores that you used to get. Another question that's in the Q&A is how many full-length digital SAT practice tests are available? I believe there are 4 SAT tests and 1 each of PSAT, NMSQT, and PSAT 8-9. And then I think the final question that's in the Q&A before we
And Ted, I will put the links to those things that you just mentioned in the chat.
Okay. And then students do have to use their College Board accounts at this point. I believe that the test day ticket logins, which were used for fall testing, were good for 30 days. And so after that, so depending on when you gave students their test day tickets, they may have expired. And so they can still get into Blue Book using their College Board account, and then they can practice within Blue Book on those practice tests. And that's actually the better way for them going forward, because then all that information is going to go into their My Practice website, and they'll have all that staying there for more time than the ones for the fall logins. And so I think we've answered everything that's in Q&A at this point.
All right, so let's if you're all set, Kari, we'll shift over to talk a little bit about Khan Academy. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Jason Feig. Super thrilled to be here and just grateful for the opportunity that Tom has provided, and then to partner up with Ted and Kari to talk about the work that Khan Academy is doing. As we jump in, I'm going to do 2 things. One, there are a few slides I want to walk through, but then the second portion, I want to actually spend some time in the platform. I think it helps bring the story to life a whole lot more. So as we get kicked off, first, my email address, I wanted to offer that up here, and then in the last slide has that, so that as we're walking through this story and you want to have a follow-up conversation maybe about how to get teachers set up or have a little more in-depth conversation, because anytime this conversation unfolds, I never feel like I'm able to do it complete justice, because there are so many details, and I know you're inundated with a number of other things. So there's my email address. And again, I'll pop that back up. as I wrap up today's session. But let's talk a little bit about.
Hey, Jason, one question that's come up a couple of times. I just want you to hit on this before you get started.
Yeah.
Is, are students able to link their Khan account with College Board accounts for that customized practice? So that's something that is no longer available. But this is a very new and exciting way for students to interact with Khan.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just kind of kick it off there then, since I'm not able to see the chat. So thanks for that, Ted. So when we talk about this, the partnership that Khan Academy has with College Board, you're most familiar with the story where students would take a PSAT and SAT, they would link scores, and some of you maybe painfully recall the challenge it was to take a score, have a student create a College Board and Khan Academy account and link those scores, because if students created multiple accounts, and you were the one responsible for helping that process, I suspect it brought up some heartburn there. So as Ted mentioned, students no longer link scores. What we did when College Board announced the move to the digital SAT is we created a full-length master-enabled course that will capture all the content. And I'm going to get into that, not just in the slide deck, but that's why I want to shift live so we can bring some of this story to life. But the linking process does not occur anymore. Students will engage in the way Kari described a moment ago in Blue Book around practice tests. And then all of the practice will happen on the College Board side. And I'll talk specifically, again, when we go to the live version of this, what a full-length master-enabled course means when we talk about SAT practice. So the partnership still remains. The story for the most part is similar if you were part of this journey up to this point in terms of what it means for students to practice. One of the things that I'll show in the live demo that I would mention here in terms of a full-length courses, we have what's called a course challenge built in. Think of it like a pre-assessment. So your digital SAT practice course now has that course challenge. Again, we'll bring that to life when I go live in the demo. So the way we support at Khan Academy, the digital SAT prep is there is the reading and writing section and then a math section. So everything Kari just shared, you will see terminology looks identical in terms of the way a student would engage. And as Kari started talking about student score reports, and having that student move from maybe taking a PSAT to maybe practicing an SAT test, the terminology is going to look the same as they move over to the Khan Academy side. But in the course, there are in-depth lesson articles, there are worked examples, and there are practice exercises. So if any of you have either used yourself, maybe your own child, maybe you're supporting students with Khan Academy, the digital SAT course is identical to the other full-length master-enabled courses. So it doesn't look different. Students don't engage differently. A teacher would still create a course, and I'll get into that in the exact same way. There are 3 difficulty levels when you look at this course, which will come to life when we go live. I mentioned the term that this is a mastery-enabled course. What that means is when the student opens the course, as I mentioned a moment ago, there's a course challenge. And what our first recommendation is, however you might use this course, is that students take that course challenge first. So even if they've taken a PSAT, they've taken a practice test, the student will open up that course challenge and it will give them a mixed skill practice to kick the story off and help feed the system. So that's where I want to center the first part of the conversation, because no matter in what way you use the course, that course challenge, whether it's teacher directed or student directed, recommending to students to say, before you start, take the course challenge. So essentially it feeds the system. There are quizzes and unit tests built into this course, which are a great way for you to check understanding. Again, in the live demo, this will all certainly be more clear. And then there's some skill progress data available. So not only can students track their own progress, and certainly the gold standard would be a student taking a PSAT, being fully aware of the skills that they need to work on, and then moving over to Khan Academy. But the reality is it's going to take some coaching on your end. And so the reports that Kari showed in combination with this course, I think can really help you pinpoint some areas for students to focus.
Hey, Jason, really
Yeah.
quick before you go on, there was a question on that one, and I'm going to ask for participants. Please make sure you're putting the questions in the Q&A. It's just going to be a lot easier for us to make sure we manage and don't miss them. But secondly, one of the questions not in the Q&A, Jason, I thought was a good one to surface is the screen you just had on talked about SAT prep. So one of the questions is there preparation for the PSAT and the PSAT 8-9 style test, or just the SAT on the mastery courses?
Yeah, great question, Tom. So we're in the midst of building a PSAT practice course right now. It's not available on the dashboard, but that is in the works and it's something that will be available. I do not have a timeline on that. And I've learned over time not to put timelines on projects, but that's in the works. And when I get, Tom, to the dashboard, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to back the story up all the way to 9th grade. So I think we'll cover a little bit of that, but the PSAT course is coming.
Thank you.
Mastery enabled. Just one quick highlight here, even if it's a bit repetitive, our platform was built with mastery learning in mind, meaning students move at their own rate. You know this best. You work with students every day, and that students may have an understanding of a concept at different points. And so our entire platform is built with mastery learning in mind. You have the ability, I'm going to show you this. Let's just assume for a minute, because the topic of today is SAT practice, that you go in and you create a course. You give students a join code. They're in your digital SAT course. You now have the ability to assign what's called a course mastery goal. And what you could do is, now that results are back, you could set up a class at khanacademy.org, invite students in with a join code. You can set a full-length mastery enabled goal. What that means is that you, in theory, this conversation might be from September to June. So I sign my goal saying I want students to complete 80% of mastery in a course. Now it's a digital SAT course, but you'll see when we go live, there's a number of other options as well that could support your students practicing for the SAT, especially before 11th grade. But you can set a course mastery goal and you can set a due date. Then this is relatively new, and this was based on field feedback, but if you want to assign a course mastery goal to say, we want students to progress throughout the year on the SAT course, that's great. But it could be that your core instruction, let's call it in December, is aligned to a particular unit in the digital SAT course. Well, you can assign just that unit mastery now. And so when you have your results back, you already know maybe what your formative or summative or other data and information might say in your day-to-day work. And now you're gearing up for this SAT story. You can now set a course mastery goal if you want for the full year, but you can also then look at those units that are broken down and just assign that unit. The nice part about this is it breaks learning into small chunks. Because I'm sure you might imagine, if you were to talk to students about, hey, we've got this full course and your job is to move from point A to point Z, they might not be overly thrilled about that experience. And so assigning the unit mastery could be really helpful. And again, we'll go live on that. This is just a visual representation. So the course masteries, the whole story, the whole course, or you assign unit mastery and or both. But you can use both depending on what your use case is. So
Jason, I think you've answered a couple questions that are in the Q&A. I just want to bring those out. So because they can do either units or the course mastery, students could just focus on reading and writing and not math, or they could focus on math and not reading and writing, correct?
Absolutely. And you'll see that's exactly how the course is broken down. And this is part of the reason, because one of the beautiful parts about working for Khan Academy is that when there is field feedback, teachers that use this every day, we were able to pivot quickly. And this is what this came out of: teachers saying course mastery is great, but we want to break this and chunk this down into just a specific portion of a course. And the course is broken down between reading and writing and math. And you'll see that in just a moment.
And then the other quick question that came out is the course challenge, taking the course challenge, is that shorter than a Blue Book full-length practice test?
Great question. It takes, it's 30 questions. what our experience tells us it takes between 30 and 45 minutes.
So much shorter than a full-length practice
Much
test.
shorter.
Thanks.
And we have an update coming very soon to that, where we're condensing that even further. But for now, expect 30 to 45 minutes. Students can stop and come back and start. It's not a one and done. We recommend actually you do engage with students in one sitting, but you don't have to do that.
And then one final question, Jason, and I think you've already, you will answer this. That is that, we don't have the ability to pull reports from my practice, aggregated student reports from my practice in the College Board world. And I think that's why it's so valuable to engage with Khan Academy, because I know you're going to get to the kind of reports that teachers and administrators can pull out of Khan Academy that they won't be able to do out of the College Board world.
Exactly, Ted. And what Kari was sharing about what's being reported, we've recently had a conversation about this with Kari. I had one with Kari and Ted. When you look at this as an example, and that's a great transition, where I set a course mastery goal and a unit mastery goal. This is just an indication from the teacher dashboard where I can see how students are progressing throughout the year. Below at the bottom of that screenshot on the right-hand side, that's the unit. So maybe the foundations of algebra was a September, and I know the timing isn't that, but let's call this December. Foundations of algebra, I have a subset of students that did not perform on the PSAT or PSAT well, or need a boost in those skills. I can just assign that unit mastery, and I can monitor how they're progressing in the course. Now, while that is good information, there's even better information that you can break down. This is that course challenge we've already referenced, about 45 minutes, 30 questions. You can now assign the course challenge. So previous to this year, when you linked scores and you came over to practice on Khan Academy, that was not a full-length mastery enabled course. So we reacted when College Board made the shift to say we need a full-length course, and the course challenge then becomes critical. And if I want to assign that, considering the time of year, maybe you want to say, in December, I want to assign the course challenge once. I can monitor that progress. I'll show you that. And maybe then you want to assign that for a second time to your juniors. So you can assign the course challenge multiple times to check on progress. And that, again, is not all the specific skills, because there's a number of other rich pieces of information in the course. But this is, again, a high-level snapshot of all the skills a student will see on the SAT. So course challenge, and this I always feel compelled to pause for a second, because sometimes I talk really fast, but I want to pause here. And the reason is, no matter what course you use on Khan Academy, and I know we're centered today on SAT, but I'm going to get into conversation briefly about algebra, getting ready for algebra, and a grammar course. When you see the results from the teacher standpoint, you may see students not started on a skill. Pretty straightforward. You may see attempted, and that's an indication that the student had less than 70% correct when practicing a skill. Let's jump all the way to mastered. The reason I pause and slow down is probably my background experience as a teacher and administrator and all the great conversation around grading practices. We didn't build this as a way to align to traditional grading practices. So when schools reach out to say, we want to use a course, Jason, how should we assign a grade to mastery or to proficient? That is, because this is built with mastery learning in mind, I wanted to pause and just urge caution to try to assign a traditional grade to these levels, because proficiency in our world in the course means that I had 100% correct on a single skill. It's great. We're super thrilled. Student works on one single skill, I get 100%. And then I move from familiar to proficient. I score proficient a couple times or take a quiz or unit test, still at 100%. Now I can get to mastery. And the reason I get to mastery is I can demonstrate an understanding on a mixed skill practice. So just like you do every day, you may be teaching a skill today. Do students know that in May? Or when you deliver a summative assessment? So you're taking skills. So mastery is really critical there. It's not easy to get to. So the reason the pause was there was, if you were to say, we want all students to get to mastery on every concept, there's a reality that's very difficult to do, and it's a series of mixed skill practice. Proficient's great. 100% on a single skill. So just wanted to highlight that. And then we're going to talk about this. I'm going to get into this because I want to get to this, the dashboard for our last 25 minutes, but you can assign content very easily, set due dates so that it's for a specific student or groups of students. And so we'll get into how to do that. And then your teacher dashboard is really powerful. So on the left-hand side of that screen, there are two shots there. The assignment scores, think of that like your grade book, where when you assign something, whatever that might be in the course, you can see if students are completing. And you can drill deep into that assignment and see very specific students perform. So now imagine a world, and this is where Ted and I and Tom were taught, and Kari the other day, we were talking. Imagine a world where once you get results back, you probably have a pretty good sense of a set of skills. Now, if you have students working in the digital SAT course, could you have them just work hands off A to Z? You could, but you can also be very strategic and provide them assignments where you know that there are skill gaps. And then your right-hand side of that is managing assignments. So you could look at your data and information, provide a series of assignments that you know are that you want to be high touch based on results. And there's an editing feature and you can see responses. So that's a really powerful portion of this. This is just another new feature. If you haven't been on Khan, I always say, if you haven't been on Khan Academy in 3 months, there are some updates. And I suspect that will be even more and more based on the work that we're doing. But this is a student view. And I had talked about the gold standard a moment ago of maybe a student monitoring their own progress and have a sound understanding of how they're performing. But visually speaking, I can track how I'm doing on the left-hand side of my screen. So when I go in, while this is Algebra Foundations, switch that name to Digital SAT, and I can track how I'm doing. So you could, in theory, as a teacher, say, we're going to work through this course. Anywhere where you're not at proficient yet, I want you to work. And then the second part could be, I provided you assignment based on what I know. And so you could work two different angles there with the course. I sent these data trackers to Tom earlier. This is actually in our Khan for Educators course. If you haven't taken that course, it's built into the platform. It really covers everything that we do, but I want to take this snippet out because if you don't want to recreate a tracking sheet and you think this is a value add, just want to put that on your radar, and Tom can share that out after. Parents and students can download the Khan Academy app as well, so you can use this from a mobile device. This one I wanted to pause for the second time on, and then I'm going live. So I live in Michigan, but I work with 13 states. So any state, West Virginia, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, any state, there's a full length or a college board state, essentially, you're delivering PSAT and SAT. We keep getting asked the question that Ted asked, or somebody on the webinar asked, do you have a PSAT course? The answer right now is no, but what we built here that might be helpful is a snapshot if you want to start practicing using the Khan Academy platform and what courses align really well to preparing students before game day, essentially, before the SAT. And so you'll see back to 9th grade. I'll take the math, the second column there, 9th grade math. There's a Algebra 1A for students and getting ready for Algebra 1 course. These are all prerequisite skills that we know not only help students in your day-to-day instruction in these courses, but it also sets them up for getting ready for the skills they'll see eventually in the SAT. So I think Tom will share this deck out, and so feel free to use this, or if you want to follow up and there are maybe some more nuanced pieces of a plan you want to put together, I'm more than happy to sit and talk with you about that.
Yeah, Jason, I will definitely share out all the slide deck, both from Kari and from you, with the follow-up email and as well as that chart document. A quick question. In the chat, we had a couple people asking, and I'm assuming the answer is no, because I know the College Board, other than in the states that have required it, has stopped doing the writing portion of the test. Khan Academy used to have segments on the writing practice. Do those exist still, or are those not a part of the mastery course in this process any longer?
So they're not a part of the courses, but when I close out the conversation today, Tom, I'm going to highlight what I think is it's a related piece of work that we're doing around Conmigo and our new AI tool that
Yeah.
I think can get at what you're talking about. But to answer your question directly, no, it's not necessarily a feature that's built in.
Cool. Thank you.
So I'm shifting, I want to shift from the still screenshot to live, and some of this is overlap. So let's say you walk away from this conversation and say, we want students to use Khan Academy to practice for the SAT. The way a teacher builds a course is no different. So all I did was go to my name, I click teacher dashboard, and there's an add a new course button here. So when I add a new course, it's no different than what we've historically done. So I add the course, I name the course. You can use, well, let me just do this, SAT course 11th. And I can import students from Google Classroom. And because I already had SAT typed in, it brought this to me. But if I left this open, there's all kinds of courses. I can select the two courses, Digital SAT Math and Digital SAT Reading and Writing. And then what my recommendation is, you either invite students with Google Classroom, or there's a join link. So none of this is different than historically that you've been able to build a class. So let's assume you've built that class. This is my demo account. I want to show you a student perspective first. So the learner home, I'm going to go to courses, and I'm going to take a look at that digital SAT course. So this is student perspective first, and then we'll get to teachers. So I'm a student, you gave a join code or invited them into a course. They look at this, the sort of the most wide open landscape would be, hey, start at the beginning and work to the end, which you could do. Or you could, when we get to the teacher side, I'll show you how you can provide assignments. But from a student perspective, I'll just click Foundations of Algebra. On the left-hand side are all my units. At the top of the screen is what I referenced earlier, not started, attempted, familiar, proficient, mastered. So the white boxes are exercises. Then there are quizzes. And then there's a unit test. So I'm in Foundations of Algebra, and I scroll down a bit. On the left-hand side are the learning areas, videos, articles. May or may not be helpful. Sometimes they're not, again, maybe not the most enjoyable experience of your student's life, but if you're delivering direct instruction on a particular concept and you know it happens to show up on the SAT, it could be a really cool way for you to provide either an article or a video that actually aligns with core instruction. So SAT practice doesn't become this thing that's floating out there as separate. So the more savvy you become and more familiar become with this course, the better you could utilize this. So I'm a student and I say, I'm not watching an article, or I'm not reading an article, I'm not watching a video. I want to jump right to practice. And this will not look any different than before. The student begins to practice on that skill. There is a hint feature. I'm going to take 3 minutes at the end to talk about Conmigo because it's related but unrelated, but I just want to put it on your radar, the student tutor. But for now, very similar, and a student can work through this experience. Let me go back here for a second. And I want to go just to the digital SAT course. So this is I was in a unit a moment ago. Now I'm in the full-length math portion. I referenced the course challenge, which is right here in the bottom right corner. And you can see all across the board, all these are currently white because I'm not started, even though we're supposed to practice internally at Khan Academy. So we're all friends here. I haven't practiced in a while, algebra or digital SAT. You have the quiz, and then you have the unit test. All these are assignable. So student, again, wide open landscape, work unit 1 all the way down. Or I'm delivering core instruction, let's say in unit 5, and I want students to work there between a window of time. I could assign that. I could direct students just to go in and say, you're only working in unit 5 today after core instruction, or maybe you have a 30-minute window built in at the close of the week. So lots of flexibility here, but students very clearly see how they're progressing. So at the highest level, if you weren't going to get real specific, you could actually just say anywhere where you're not at proficient, so take the course challenge, feeds the system, anywhere where you're not at proficient yet, you can work. So it gives students choice and maybe to be able to find some success early in this experience to give them confidence to keep moving. So that captures a student experience. Now I want to hop over to the teacher dashboard to give you a view. So we're assuming for a moment that you added the new class, it's digital SAT, whatever game plan that you're going to deliver. And once your course is built, you would simply select that course. So this, if you're familiar with, if you are familiar with Khan Academy, so let me go back here, demo account. Pretend with me for a second, this is the digital SAT course. It all looks the same. You built the course, and now I go in, and I only want to highlight a couple, what I would consider high leverage portions of this. So students start working, and the first thing at the top here that I can see is activity. So I have my list of students that came in. I can see how many learning minutes. So all of our efficacy research right now, we have over 50 pieces of research that say 30 minutes of practice, true practice, not just time, is we're seeing about 2 skills leveled up a week. How you break that 30 minutes down is up to you. But I can see learning minutes, the skills students worked on, and if they're leveling up. So it becomes really clear if there's a high percentage of skills worked on and we're not leveling up, it could tell a number of stories, but it may be that the student is struggling. It could be that the student is complying with a time expectation that was set in class. I had to get 30 minutes in. I went in without oversight, not in Michigan, but maybe in another state. Students might just sort of spend the time. You're going to know that. I mean, you guys will know your students best. But, and then I can actually see here a breakdown of skills worked on. So because this is a demo, what will begin to light up are these attempted familiar proficient. So that is what I always sort of describe the activity as. That's okay information, but this is really, really where when you talk about matching to core instruction, and I go drop down here to my digital SAT course, which disappeared, which is super terrific at a time like this. I don't know where it went. I'm going to open up Algebra 1, which is really, we're pretending this is your digital SAT course. What happens here is I go to skills, and as students work, it will break down for me every skill that shows up in that digital SAT course. And I can scroll over here and see how many students are at what level. And I can break that down even further to see student names. So imagine what Kari shared at the beginning. You've got this rich set of information. You've got all the information that you already have as you work with students. You're going to use Khan Academy's platform in the SAT practice. I look at a skill, I can see what level. And if I want from here, I could say, I want to assign that skill directly. And when I hit assign a skill, because you can assign a couple different places, I select the target date, and then either I want all students or a subset. So when you talk about differentiating instruction, and not all students who took the PSAT as an example are scoring the same, this is a beautiful way for you to differentiate. And the better you know your results on the College Board side, and the more you understand how this course is set, the more specific you can be instructionally to assign sets of questions. And if you didn't want to get too deep into the weeds here, and you were saying the results tell us that a particular skill across the board doesn't look so great, then you can just assign this skill to all students. So that's the skill tab. And if you have other classes you roster in or add students in, it's a drop down. If you want to look at specific units, or maybe you just want to look at students that take mastered off, and you just want to look at students who are at attempted and familiar, you could do that. And then it really pinpoints assignments. So, and this is that mastery tab. I had a still screenshot. If you set a course mastery goal, you can see how they're progressing or not by course and by unit. And so again, maybe a value add, maybe not. As I go down the list, I want to highlight a couple other things here. I'm not going to spend time under mastery goal here because it's straightforward and very intuitive. That's if you want to assign a course or a unit mastery, click assign, it's straightforward. But what I really want to get to is under assignments. So going back to the beginning, I built a course. I have students practicing. You determine the game plan, what you want that to look like. I go to my assign tab and I pick my digital SAT course. I can use the search box to search for content to assign. I think of that like the Google of Khan Academy. It's often underutilized, but it's there. Or I can say my digital SAT course, solving equations and inequalities. This is my whole course dropped out in front of me. I look at this and I can say, this video looks pretty good. I could click on it. Anything that's blue in our system's a clue. I can dive deeper. So maybe I clicked on the video and said, wow, that really matches well. And I can go over here and simply assign that. And I can assign it to multiple classes, just a single class. I can assign it to all students or some students. And you want to set the due start date. Now, this is the last time I'll sort of pause. But what we see from time to time is we're practicing for the SAT or any course. And I go in and I'll say, we want all of our students, let's pick a different unit. We want all of our students to focus on working with units. If I go over here and I click assign the entire unit, the students will walk in the next day and not be happy with you because they're going to see 18 assignments on their dashboard. So while this looks like a convenient, efficient way to provide assignments, the problem is you've just posted 18 assignments in one shot. So our recommendation is drop this down and then break this into smaller chunks. So rate conversion here, even if I click that, that's still 5 assignments. And that might be okay for the week. Or I drop it one step below and I can click a single assignment. So that's just sort of a word of caution. We see this from time to time where I'm trying to be efficient, and I totally get that, but just urge some caution as students walk in and you say, well, let's work on algebra foundations, and you just assign them 35 assignments. So again, I'm under the assign tab, pretty intuitive on what you want to assign. And then the score feature here, think of it like your grade book. So I have students working in this digital SAT course, and maybe I provided a series of videos, articles, exercises. Anytime there's an exercise, I can assign that. When the due day is up, I'll see the scores. I can click on any individual student if I want to dive in there. But what's really, I think, terrific could be, you've got your results back. If you're really creative in how you use this course and strategic, you could say, we know there are high leverage skills that we need to focus on. And once you assign it, students come back in, you can open this assignment up. And on the left-hand side, I can see every question that the students in my class had been asked. And if you want to go over this with a class, great. If you want to use this to check your own understanding of how they're progressing, great. But I can look at this and you can even see how students answered a particular question. So I know this is getting kind of into the weeds, but I just want to show you what I believe is one of the most underutilized resources that is completely free that you have access to practice. Because I want to shift for the last couple minutes on this point, because this is great. And prior to this work, I spent a lot of time with Ted and Kari because I work for the College Board. So the perspective I come from is we all know that practicing for the SAT maybe is not the most enjoyable experience of a student's life. And the better we can use a course like this to not make it be an isolated moment in time and in sync with core instruction, the greater the likelihood that we can keep students sort of engaged in the story. And I bring that up because while this is a great course, this digital SAT course, the other recommendations that I might make, and if you remember in the slide deck, I showed you sort of a view of 9th through 12th. There's an Algebra 1 course. There are all of these getting ready for courses that are prerequisite skills that not only do they show up on the PSAT and SAT, but they're showing up in your day-to-day instruction in these courses. And so everything I showed you on the digital course, you can build additional courses. So often we recommend the Getting Ready for Grade Algebra 1, the Algebra 1, and then this grammar course is really powerful. So digital SAT in combination with these courses, when you're looking at a more of a comprehensive plan, can be really helpful. So what I want to do is I want to take 1 minute and then pause to see if there are questions. But I want to take you back for a moment. And I had asked Tom, when we were talking about this preparation for this, you may have heard some noise being made in education around AI. And I don't know how you feel when that topic comes up, but we built a student tutor into our platform with guardrails. It's called Conmigo. It's an AI tool. It acts like a student tutor. We also have Conmigo built as a teacher assistant. I only want to show you a version of this on the student side briefly, because while this is still a story in the making and is not part of everything I just shared, down the road, this might be a value add. So now I'm a student, I'm in the digital SAT math course and I'm stuck. So I'm working with solving linear equations with inequalities. And I look at this question, that hint feature's always been there, but they're pretty basic hints. Now I have Conmigo to the right-hand side here. And Conmigo knows I'm in this course. It's looking at the same question I am. There are some features help me solve, try a similar example, or why should I care about this learning? Because what Conmigo is trying to do is trying to personalize. Maybe you love baseball, video games, whatever you might love, Conmigo can adapt to that. But a student might look at this question and say, give me the answer. When you think of AI and what you might be hearing, Conmigo does not just give the answer. We put guardrails. Sorry, but I can't give the answer. Let's work on it together. It acts just like you would as an educator or a great tutor. And this can be incredibly helpful if I'm stuck and I don't have a teacher, maybe at the moment I need help. And there's a number of other features, but I just wanted to say that really briefly because there's a lot of noise sort of being made around AI, and this is a new feature on our side. So I'm going to pause there with, I think, 4 minutes.
Hey, Jason.
See if there are questions.
Yeah, so I think there's a really good question. There's a couple of really good questions in the Q&A. One of them is there a way that in Khan you can blend an ELA 11 course and put in the SAT course questions? So can you blend the two mastery courses?
Yeah, so the courses are under one umbrella. So you pick the two courses, the digital SAT math and the digital SAT reading writing. That's one course. If you want to add another course that we offer, all you have to do is build a course. They don't blend. It's not as if the course, they come together, but what on the student's page, they'll see both courses with you as the teacher.
Okay. And then the other question, I know Tom's already answered it, but I'd like you to take a stab at it too. And what about, using Khan, recommending that the elementary teachers and middle school teachers in a school district utilize the resources there? There's so much in Khan from elementary all the way up through AP courses. What's your take on that?
Well, my take is I think the Khan Academy platform is one of the most underutilized free platforms available with quality content. And what we're seeing is educators are inundated, right, with resources. And so that's why our team always offers to follow up so that schools deeply understand that content not only goes back on that platform to third grade, but there is also a Khan Academy Kids portion of our organization that focuses on K2. And when we partner with schools, we like to put a comprehensive plan together. And it doesn't mean that it takes the place of other resources. It enhances what you're already doing. So much of what's on there is largely underutilized, particularly with the data and analytics that you get right at your fingertips as if students are using the platform.
Thanks. Great answer. I don't see anything more in Q&A except the question about sketches. Tom, do you want to hit that before we close
So
out?
as we wrap up, a couple of high level pieces I think to remember is one is that the partnership between College Board and Con still exists, though it looks a little different, right? Because with the adaptive, multi-stage adaptive testing in those pieces, it's not going to be the exact alignment. So we've seen a little bit of a shift where, you know, if we're thinking about this holistically, the practice part of this is now in Blue Book. And Ted put into the chat, so there were a number of questions about SAT writing practice. That's going to go live on the Blue Book side, I think sometime in December. So it's coming. It's not there yet, but it is coming in that place. So the practice part there. Now the preparation and the learning piece is twofold. One is there is this wonderful resource with Khan Academy. Much of it is free. Some of it does have costs associated. So there's a little bit of a both and. When we think of the partnership we've had with the College Board as well as the SAT Task Force out of GLN, we'll be doing a 5th and final webinar as a part of this series on December 14th, again, free and accessible to everybody, which will involve a number of folks from the GLN SAT Task Force talking about, all right, now that we know what those results that are going to be released later this month look like, here's how you can take that band data and that skill insight piece that Kari showed a little bit of at the beginning, and how you can not only use Khan, but here's how you can align it to best practices with the essential practices and what the state has kind of put together to help instructional practice elevate with support from, not directly related to the test. So I think there's going to be some big shifts in the way that we have to think and handle this, because the nature of this process has changed, which is really good, right? It's going to make us reflect on, think about our practices, and do that better work. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to think about this today, and why we're so grateful to have our friends from the College Board on to talk about a little bit about what that's going to look like, how the Skills Insight, the SSQB, and other pieces are going to play into our knowledge. We had Jason on here to show, all right, here are some external resources that you all and your students have access to and are relatively familiar with, even though they look a little different, as Jason said, even in the last 3 months. And the Conmigo tool, while there's a cost, is exceptionally cool. I've played with it a lot. As anybody who's been to one of my webinars knows, I'm a big proponent of AI tools as a support for students and for teachers. So there's a lot of great tools. Our next webinar on December 14th is going to be about getting back to really, really good instruction and what that looks like to support our students doing better. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to use assessment as an autopsy and something that we go to at the end of the year, but how do we use assessment to drive that really good instruction in our classes? And so that's going to be our last piece. So this will be emailed out. I think I answered that about 47 times, but there are a few more questions in there. So at the end of this week, Thursday or Friday, either Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, you'll get an email. All of the PDFs of the slide decks will be in there, as well as the resource Jason gave, as well as links to everything to follow up for all of those other parts. So we would like to thank you. It's 10:32. We're relatively on time. This is rare for us. Thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate our guests for being on. Ted, Kari, Jason, I always appreciate you. Obviously, if there are any questions, my email is tom@massp. Feel free to reach out, and those emails will also be in that follow-up. So without anything else, we appreciate everybody being on. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and week, and we'll look forward to seeing you all back on December 14th. Take care, everyone.